the reason I think he might have a better, more leadership and more responsibility, Benji, which I want to talk about right now, is Mathieu van der Poel's injury. It's come out that he had a bit of a knee issue, and then that got fixed. But then the teams come out, and there's been conflicting reports. But then the Roodhofts came out, and then his father was saying what was happening, that apparently he's going to be out of racing action for months. He's not doing CX World Championships and stopped riding CX on the 5th of January because he has chronic pain in his back. The Roodhoft brothers said he doesn't have chronic back pain. He just has continual back problems where he has pain in his back quite a lot, which is the definition of chronic back pain. So apparently that needs to be fixed. And to quote his team doctor, just to make sure, Guido Schutter said in an interview, one of the discs in his back didn't fully function as a shock absorber, resulting in less movement in his lower back. It looks like he will be missing at least the first few months of racing. I think, Benji, they have to be so overly cautious here. They are good points-wise. They have Phillips and Merlier. If they want to go World Tour next year, it's open to them. If they do go World Tour, they need a healthy Van der Poel for that next 3-year cycle and for their sponsors. And I don't think they should rush him back. Not exactly a controversial opinion, right?
Yeah, I believe that I agree with you. They've also been quite clear about that they're not trying to rush him back. I think Mathieu van der Poel himself said quite recently when he returned to CX and then he left CX again because the injury was kind of back. And then we heard that he was saying, okay, I'm not going to rush myself back. I'm going to make sure everything's all right before I get back to racing. And the question is then, well, when is he going to come back? We're talking about not being there for the CX Worlds, but what does this mean for the season that is coming? And we've already had a bit of reporting where it looks like he might not even be back for the initial classics of the season. And the question there is then, is that going to hurt the team? Who is going to take leadership then if Mathieu van der Poel is not there? All these questions, but it's definitely sure that it's a lingering back pain that needs to be fixed in the long term and doesn't need to be bandaged up to do the cobble races in a quick matter, I think.
Exactly. They're pretty deep there with Philipsen and Merlier, particularly Philipsen, I think, can take over a leadership role in some of them. And I think I'm understanding this correctly, Benji. This back issue is unrelated to the famous crash he had in the Olympics mountain bike, where he landed heavily on his back. Apparently, this was a lingering issue before then, according to the Roodhofts, and it's not technically related to that heavy fall. So I think my concern is, I know he's only 27, Mathieu van der Poel, but he's been riding very seriously for a long time. Do you think, with the likes of Pidcock, Van Aert, and Mathieu van der Poel, Benji, CX seems to give them almost a bit of an advantage in terms of how, I don't know how good they are. Maybe it's unrelated, but is he doing too much? Is Van der Poel doing too much? Doing mountain bike one day, CX one day, or do you think it's just unrelated and he just has a back problem?
Well, quite certainly, I think that doing an entire season of racing for 5 years in a row is going to perhaps overload a rider and might make him peak earlier in his career and so forth. But that's something that hasn't been properly proven yet. How many riders in the history have done CX, mountain bike, and road race throughout the entire year? And do we have a proper report of that 5 years later they were not at their best level anymore as a consequence? We don't have that much data when it comes to that. So we're kind of in the moment where I think I heard Wout van Aert speak about it on a podcast most recently, where he was asked, well, the dad of Mathieu van der Poel was speaking about that these riders, they are being rushed through all these disciplines an entire year. Is that going to have a consequence on their career? And Van Aert basically responded with, I don't know. I guess that's something that we'll see in the future. I personally don't feel it, so he said, but it might be something that pops up at a certain point.
And particularly, I don't know how mentally draining it is for Wout van Aert to turn up and do a CX race. Is it just basically like him doing an hour sort of intensity of not training, but an hour of serious intensity, and there's just people there watching? Like the crash risk where you actually will hurt yourself seriously is quite low. So maybe it's not that big a deal. I don't know. But it does seem like when everybody else, all these other riders who, particularly the GC guys or classics guys, are tuning up with, proper training or road focused training, and these guys are flying out to America. Well, Valbenart's not going, but they're doing CX right up until the end of January. You do wonder, how does that affect the start of their classic season? But I don't think we're going to see Van der Poel at opening weekend. Remains to be seen whether we'll see him at Tour of Flanders. I certainly hope we do. He's a big element to that, and hopefully Paris-Roubaix as well. But I think Tour de France, Benji, he again will be wanting to take yellow either after the TT on one of those cobbly stages. So that's why I think they should be really cautious, because that Tour de France Stage 5 cobble stage really has his name all over it, as well as Askren and Pedersen.